Hello, BookTube. I'm going to be reviving my long dropped bookshelf tour. So yeah, I just pretty much because I feel like continuing to show you guys. I'm actually trying to cull some of a lot of the books from my shelves because essentially over the past 3 or 4 years that I've been interested in reading, I've picked up a lot of books that maybe I shouldn't have picked up. Maybe I should have acquired books at a slower pace to match my own reading pace. Because the result was that I have a lot of books just waiting for me, like tons of them just waiting for me, and I don't know when I'm gonna get to them. So I'm trying to cut down my shelves a bit to only the books that I really want to read, so that it's a little bit more manageable, and so that I can just see everything on my shelf as well. Um, so I'm just gonna show you guys one of the shelves here. Where I did the poetry shelf here. Now I'm gonna show you this other shelf, which is just a bunch of random. It's I don't organize it very well. And so also sorry if I make any speaking mistakes in this video because I didn't get much sleep last night. I'm not sure why. So I'm a little bit tired, but yeah, I'll get going. So the very first author we have here, and I should say before I start actually, I haven't read most of these books, so I won't be able to make any great comments on them. But the first author that I have here on my shelf, which I haven't read at all, but I've been really tempted to read. I've been really tempted to read him recently. That is Mark Twain. This is probably the edition that I'll try to read him out of when I start reading him. It's the original illustrated Mark Twain. Has this annoying thing here, but I can't really get rid of it. And yeah, it says here, well, it contains The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, The Prince and the Pauper, plus 29 short stories, and over 450 original illustrations. And I think I found this at a Value Village just for like $10, so it was a very good deal, and I'm glad I have this. I also like the cover, actually, although it's very blurry. I don't know why, but yeah. And then next we have some more Herman Melville. I recently read Moby Dick, and so now probably the next step would be to read some of his other works, Billy Budd, Sailor, and Selected Tales. I think Denson read some of these tales, or he at least read one of the shorter novels of Melville. I can't remember which one, but I think it's probably in here. So I'm glad I have this. Yeah. Next up, I have, well, this was originally my brother's book, and I did read this, but it was many years ago, 1984 by George Orwell. I read this when I was in grade 9, when I was 14 or 15, right when COVID happened. And I remember why I read it. It was because my mom didn't like the fact that my English grade was a bit lower, so she contacted my English teacher, and the English teacher gave me actually a project where I would read this and then summarize each chapter and then summarize the whole novel at the end, or like write a review at the end. And I did that and actually really enjoyed it. That was maybe one of my first experiences where I enjoyed reading a book for school, which I realize can be rare. But yeah, I read this 6 years ago now, or something like that, and I still kind of remember it. I don't remember some of the details, but I still remember really enjoying this and being kind of awed by the ending, kind of disturbed by the ending, and so yeah, I'm gonna have to reread it at some point. And now we have a duplication. I don't know if I mentioned I'm trying to cut down on the books on my shelf. I don't know if I'll keep this one. This is The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. So the latter title is a duplication. I don't know. I don't know if I really need this edition when I have the other one. And then maybe in the future, if I get rid of this in the future, I can just look for a single edition of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, and that way there won't be as much duplication on my shelves. So yeah. Next up, I have this book, which I heard Steve Donahue praise It is Conrad, Don Camillo, and Don Camillo and the Devil by Giovanni Guareschi. And I think Steve compared this to Jeeves and some can't remember the title, but I think you guys know what I'm talking about. Peeps and Jeeves or whatever. Anyway, apparently it's one of those worlds where it's kind of it's a comic novel where you go into the world, where you can enter into the world as a kind of escapism, and it's supposed to be very comforting and very funny, and yeah, I'm looking forward to trying this out. I haven't read this yet, but I'm glad I have this. I'm glad I have it on my shelf. Next up, okay, we have a translation of Emile Zola, The Attack on the Mill and Other Stories. So I guess this is a collection of short stories by him. I've never read Zola. The thing with a lot of these French authors, these translated editions of French authors that I have on my shelves, is that well, I'm trying to learn French, and I'm at the point where I'm just thinking, well, maybe I should just wait to read all of these French works in the original once I'm able to, instead of reading them in the translation first. I'm not sure. So I don't know if I'll keep this as well. But yeah. I don't really have much more to say. Oh, and the next one, actually, this one I'm glad that I'm holding up, because I told the author that I would hold it up in one of my videos, but I forgot to. But now I can show it to you guys. This is Hockey Camp Summer by John Blair, and John Blair is he's on BookTube himself. He's a recent addition to BookTube. He just made his second video, I think, yesterday. And yeah, he made this YA hockey novel, and I haven't read it yet. He sent it to me for free, so thank you, John. But I haven't read it yet. Only I did sample the first two chapters, and the very first chapter starts off with a hockey scene. And it's actually done pretty well. I played hockey since I was 9 up to when I was 18. And I mean, yeah, I can say that I can vouch for the fact that the hockey scene is done well and realistically. So I like that about it. It's very yeah, it should be very good. Next we have Mary Shelley, Frankenstein, the 1818 text. This is the only copy of Frankenstein that I have. I know that there's an 1830 something text, but I don't have that. I don't really know what the difference is, and I haven't read it. But of course, I hear this talked about so much, so I really need to get to it at some point. Next we have this little edition, which I hauled in April. Catherine Mansfield, In a German Pension. I've never read Mansfield. I believe she's a New Zealand author from the early 20th century. And yeah, it's a very tiny thing, just a collection of short stories. I've actually recently gained a liking for short stories ever since I read that Science Fiction Hall of Fame anthology. And so I've been wanting to read more. I just actually recently finished a collection of stories by Eudora Welty, and so maybe I should read Mansfield soon. Okay, next. Next up is this big edition of Sherlock Holmes, the original illustrated Sherlock Holmes. 37 short stories and a complete novel from the Strand magazine. So yeah, this is just a big tub of Holmes. I think I showed this in one of my videos, in one of my previous videos as well. I like the fact that they pack a lot into it, and I love the fact that they have illustrations. I really like it when books have these really well done illustrations. And I need to read more Holmes. I need to read more Arthur Conan Doyle, because I've listened to audiobooks of him. I've listened to Steve do a read aloud of The Hound of the Baskervilles, which was a lot of fun, and I would just like to maybe get into it a bit more at some point. And I would like to get to mysteries, to detective fiction a bit more at some point. Okay, next we have The Letters of Abelard and Eloise. And this is, I believe, I think it's nonfiction. I believe it's just well, here, why don't I read to you the back, because I think the back could tell you more about it than I can. Despite their misfortunes, these staunch Christians, as their letters reveal, found a path through self-pity into acceptance of a changed but lasting relationship. Wait, sorry, it starts early, sorry. The story of Eloise and Abelard remains one of the world's most celebrated and tragic love affairs. And then it's that sentence, and then it goes, whilst Eloise attained fame for her learning and administrative genius as an abbess, Abelard became an inspired leader in Paris and the foremost logician of his day. So this is a translation of their letters to each other. So it's real letters, I believe, by two very interesting historical personages, which I don't know much about them, and I haven't read this, but it looks interesting. Next up, we have, I don't know if I'll ever get to this. I don't know if I'll ever read this. This is Descent and Dogma by Matthew Arnold. So I really don't know what this is about, but I'm kind of intimidated by it. Matthew Arnold seems like a very, I don't know, a very religious, very philosophical figure or thinker. And so I don't know if I think that if I were to try to read this, I might be a little bit lost, because I don't know much about the history of philosophy and what Matthew Arnold is trying to argue here. But I have this. I found this, I think, just at some used bookstore, and just got it on an impulse. And so yeah. Okay, and then we have actually some more Arnold, and this might be a better starting point for me. This is Selected Prose by Matthew Arnold. So I wonder what is in here. I don't know much about Arnold. I know a couple of his poems, which I really like, but I don't know much of his prose. So there's all kinds of stuff here. There's some poetry in here. There are essays on the modern element in literature, on translating Homer, the popular education of France, and then essays in criticism. The function of criticism at the present time, from Maurice de Guérin, from Heinrich Heine, from Joubert, My Countrymen, 1866, a bunch of other stuff. Culture and Anarchy, 1869, Friendship's Garland, 1871. So, and there's a study of Wordsworth as well. So actually, this I hadn't even really looked at this book close enough to look at the content section there. That sounds really fascinating. So maybe I'll want to start with this one first. This sounds like there's a lot to get into here. Next up, sorry, there are a lot of books double stacked here, so I'm having a hard time getting them out of the shelf. But this is actually what I was just talking about. This is a book that I just finished. It's A Curtain of Green and Other Stories by Eudora Welty. And I read this over 3 or 4 days just last week, and I liked them quite a bit. I need to actually revisit most of them, because Welty seems like a very subtle, beautiful, she writes so beautifully, and she's a very subtle author, and I feel like I need to revisit a lot of the stories just to understand them better, and also just to try to connect with them more. But I really loved some of the stories in here. She seems to often select a lot of for her characters. She seems to choose a lot of characters with disabilities. Like I think in various stories they're characters who are mute and deaf, or I'm trying to remember what other characters there are, but there are a lot of characters with disabilities. And I just find that choice pretty interesting. I really loved here. Let me look at the content section and tell you which stories I loved. Well, I really loved A Curtain of Green, the story for which this volume is named after. I also loved A Memory. That was really good. And The Key. The Key is the story where two of the characters are deaf and mute, and I thought that was really, really interesting. Anyway, next up we have Yaroslav Hasek, The Good Soldier Svek. This is a very big book, over 700 pages, and I haven't read it yet, but it looks like it's going to be very interesting. I think it's a kind of satire of World War One, and yeah. Next up, we have The Everyman Chesterton. And I haven't read Chesterton in a couple of years, but I did read his book on Dickens before I even read Dickens. I'm not sure why, but I read his book on Dickens, and I really like Chesterton's style. I think he's very witty and funny at times. And he's, a Christian author and often argues for Christianity. And I'm not myself Christian, but I still find just following his arguments to be very, very delightful. And so yeah, I've read some of this anthology of his works, but I haven't gotten to it all. Next up, we have one book that I just showed recently on my channel, The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. I just got this from a little free library, and yeah, I'm looking forward to reading this. Next up, The Portrait of a Lady by Henry James. I got this as well this year, and I haven't read any of Henry James, so again, another classic to read. Here we have James Boswell's Life of Johnson, another classic I have not read, a very big one at that. This is actually a duplication. I have 2 copies of this book. I found this one used and wanted it because it was actually it's smaller than the other one that I have, and lighter too. And I taped it and everything. So when I try to read this book, it'll probably be out of this edition. Although I have another one, I have a really nice other one as well. Probably unnecessarily, but okay. The next book is The Portable Renaissance Reader. I think I may have shown this on a previous bookshelf tour. Maybe I moved it down a shelf by accident. But yeah, this is an anthology of writings from the Golden Age of Italy, the Golden Age of Italy in Northern Europe, 1400 to 1600, shown forth in all its rich diversity in the writings of its acknowledged masters. And I quite like this cover. I think this is one of the very old versions of the Viking Portable Libraries, and this edition is itself in pretty bad condition, but I taped it, and hopefully it holds up. Next up, we have... Okay, I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name. Is it Lord Macaulay or Lord Macaulay? Macaulay. I think it's Macaulay. This is the History of England. I might get rid of this book because when I bought this book, I didn't realize that it was abridged. This is an abridged History of England. This is an abridged version of his History of England, and I don't really want that. Well, if I'm gonna invest all this time to read what is a 600-page book, why don't I just read the full thing then, right? So yeah. This is Thomas Carlyle, Selected Writings. Don't know much about Carlyle, but this would be good to read in Victober along with these other Victorian nonfiction books that I showed you guys not too long ago. I have a lot of now that I think of it, I have a lot of Victorian books to get to in Victober, so maybe I'll read some Carlyle, maybe I'll dip into some Arnold. I think that would be a good idea. Now we have a whole bunch of Samuel Johnson, and I don't know why I have this much, but I have it. So first we have this used edition of this used anthology of Samuel Johnson's work, Rasselas, Poems and Selected Prose. I don't know, I can't remember where I found this, but it's just a used edition with lots of scribbles in it. But I also have Samuel Johnson, The Lives of the Poets, a selection. I wish Oxford had done the full Lives of the Poets. But I guess this is good enough. This is about 500 pages of his, biographies and criticism of poets of his age. But then also I have Samuel Johnson's selected essays. So these are not his biographies, but they're just his his periodical prose, in like the Rambler and whatever else he wrote in. So this seems very interesting. I'm glad I have this because I don't know. I kind of like reading. I like reading reviews and short essays, and I like to read. I like to read. I ordered periodicals, and I like to read open letters, and yeah. But now I have another unnecessary book, because this is just another anthology of Samuel Johnson. This is the Oxford version of the major works, including Rasselas. So this is pretty much the same thing as this, only it's bigger. It gives you more. So I don't really need this then if I have this. And lastly, I have another duplication of The Life of Johnson by James Boswell, and this is a really nice Oxford edition. So yeah, I just have two. I should get rid of one of them, but I'm not sure which one. Okay. Next up, wait, I'll continue. Sorry, there's one more Samuel Johnson book. This is a nonfiction book, Samuel Johnson and His World by Margaret Lane, which I haven't read. I haven't read most of Samuel Johnson, but this sounds like it'll be a very interesting nonfiction introduction to him, and it'll be And His World, which is really good, because I'd like to learn more about 18th century England, and yeah. Next up, we have Pilgrim at Tinker Creek by Annie Dillard. This is a nature book. Don't have too many nature books on my shelves, but I want to read more nature books. I read The Life of Birds by David Attenborough, and I'd like to continue reading books in that genre. This would be one of them. And also there are a bunch of others I know of, or that I have in the back of my head that I would like to read. Pat at the channel book chat with Pat sent me an email and gave me a really helpful reading list. So I'll be able to read lots in that genre, and I'll always know where to go next. And she also sent me another wonderful list for science fiction, and so the same thing goes there, which is just really exciting, because it's a whole new world. Like each genre is like this whole new world opening up. Next up we have Daniel Defoe. We have a bunch of Daniel Defoe, yeah, or at least a bit of him. This is Robinson Crusoe. This is his most famous novel, which I liked. I liked it quite a bit. It's not my favorite by him. We'll get to my favorite by him. I also haven't read all of him. I've read this, and I've read this one, Moll Flanders, which is my favorite novel by him. I've also read Roxana on Kindle, which I liked, but which I also feel a little bit ambivalent about. But Moll Flanders was really a joy to read. And this is a nice Norton Critical edition, because they give you lots of really helpful, not obtrusive, but just really helpful footnotes for just understanding some of the different words being used in here. So also though, and here's one that I'm really excited to read, and this is going to be the next Defoe that I pick up. This is A Journal of the Plague Year, another Norton Critical edition. And Andrew said that this is his favorite Defoe, I think, and that makes me want to read it, because yeah, I mean, I like Defoe in general as an author. I've liked what I've read so far, and this sounds like it'll be very interesting. Next up, we have this Great Books of the Western World book. I don't have the set, but I just found this at a used bookstore at one point. This is number 36, and it has Jonathan Swift and is it Lawrence Stern? I can't remember his first name. What was it again? Yeah, Lawrence Stern. So it has Gulliver's Travels and Tristram Shandy, neither of which I have read, but this will be well, maybe, do I need this actually? I don't know, because on one of my other shelves I have a Norton Critical edition of Jonathan Swift's works, So the only reason why I'm keeping this is for the Stern, but maybe I could just find Lawrence Stern in another copy that's a little bit easier to carry around with me. So maybe I'll get rid of this. Who knows? Okay. We're approaching the last few books here. Now we have Tom Jones by Henry Fielding, another big 18th century English novel, which I have not read, but which I hear is quite good, from Steve Donahue, and I would like to read it at some point. Okay, and then I think I did, so I guess I did kind of organize this shelf, because right now we're getting a lot of 18th century English works in a row. This is Samuel Richardson, Clarissa, or The History of a Young Lady by Richardson. If you thought Tom Jones was big, this is much bigger. This is an epistolary novel, and it's, I think, like almost 2,000 pages, or 1,500 pages, and I haven't read it, but I'd really like to. And lastly, we have The Basic Writings of Sigmund Freud. I bought this after reading a bit of Freud in one of my classes at university. From what I read, I don't necessarily put a lot of stock in his ideas in themselves, but I kind of enjoyed his style, at least his style, as much of his style as I could see in the translation. Yeah, I thought it was very interesting. I liked the way that he wrote the couple of essays that we read, and so I got this book, which is just like five of his books. Yeah, Psychopathology of Everyday Life, the Interpretation of Dreams, 3 Contributions to the Theory of Sex, Wit and its Relations to the Unconscious, Totem and Taboo, and The History of the Psychoanalytic Movement. And this is translated by, I think, the original translation by Dr. A.A. Brill. So I'm glad I have this, because I'll want to read Freud at some point. And that is the end of the bookshelf tour. So thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you want to comment on any of these books, or just say hi in the comments, feel free. And yeah, that'll be it for today. Bye-bye. Hello, BookTube. Just 1 second. I completely forgot to show you guys that I actually just grabbed from the Little Free Library 3 new books. I'm really happy to have these. I've been unhauling a lot of my shelves, but then every time that I go to the Little Free Library, I end up hauling more books. So I don't know what the effect of that is. Probably I'll just have the same amount of books forever. But yeah, I'll show you these books that I got, because they seem pretty interesting. I got 2 books by Philip Pullman. The first, I got the first 2 books in his Dark Materials series. So The Golden Compass, this is the first one, and then The Subtle Knife, which is the second. And these are just very old, not in the best condition. But yeah, I've heard of Philip Pullman before. I think he was recommended in Steve Donahue's Fantasy Essentials video. And so I wanted to try reading him. I also remember Isaiah at the channel That Reading Guy, who read these and liked them quite a bit. And I think someone taped these books in the Steve Donahue method, which is what I do with my books as well. And so it's kind of good to see, because that means that these will hopefully hold up a bit longer. And the third book that I got was, we'll see how this is. I don't know what it'll be like to read, but this is called The Outpost People, by Claire Moet. This is a Canadian book, and I'll just read you the back quote here, because it makes it sound very good. Most Canadians know more about Fiji Islanders than they do about their fellow citizens who live in the isolated outports that dot the rocky, wind-torn coast of Newfoundland. Well, here's a book that will change that. A warm, sensitive, friendly, often hilarious book by a warm, friendly, sensitive woman who for years with her husband, Farley, was a vital part of such an outport. So that sounds really fascinating. So it's a nonfiction book written by Claire Moet, who lived in an outport in Newfoundland. And now she's writing about that outpour. This will be really fascinating. And I also was drawn to this because of the really beautiful cover. I don't know if we'll ever get snow like this again in Canada or anywhere in the world. But I really thought I think this is a beautiful photo. So anyway, that's just a little addendum to this, to the book tour, the shelf tour. So I'll see you guys later. Bye bye.